Evil cops get arrested for crimes they caught people for? This and much more in our video for today. The first video on our list shows a senior police officer, Captain James French, getting caught by another cop for DUI. Driving under influence is a serious crime as it may lead to accidents and mishaps, causing injuries and endangering other people's lives. This video that was recorded by the officer who caught him by following him home shows what happened when James realized that he was about to get arrested. James looks absolutely baffled as the officer approaches him and interrogates him about his whereabouts.
You been drinking tonight? I just got a ride.
James constantly whispers to the officer to turn his camera off and tells him that he is a captain of the Oklahoma Police Department trying to get away with his crime with the help of his position. However, the officer stays strong and doesn't compromise on the law. The officer orders James to step out of his car and he investigates further, asking him how many beers he had consumed.
How much we drink tonight, sir?
After a few moments of further interrogation, James is arrested and taken to the police station. James French was suspended, charged with the DUI fine, and sentenced to a few months in jail. Next up, we have a case of a cop who was found sitting on his police chief's corpse in a hotel room in Florida. As the two cops, Michael Neely and John Miller, were traveling for an important conference, they spent the night drinking in a hotel, but as the night passed by, something terrible happened that no one could have imagined. The suspect, Michael Neely, was taken under police custody and was brought to the interrogation cell, the same room where he had been questioning criminals for over a decade. The other two officers who were investigating Neely used their years of experience and training to put the pieces of the case together, but unfortunately Neely didn't remember anything due to high levels of alcohol consumption. Further investigations showed that the blood alcohol levels of both officers were dangerously high, due to which both had lost consciousness completely, also having no control over themselves. In the interrogation video, it was revealed that a few noise complaints came in that gave evidence of the events. Neely said that he did not remember anything except that they watched the football game and got drunk. After interrogating Neely for a while, he was arrested and sentenced to life in prison for second-degree murder. Neely, however, accepted his fate and is currently in prison. The next story we have is one of the most shocking murder cases, as it involves a police officer as the prime suspect, who was later confirmed to be the murderer of Sherry Rasmussen. Murdered back in 1986, about 23 years before Stephanie was arrested. Sherry's body was found at her home in '86. She was shot 3 times and died on the spot. However, the police were not able to identify the suspect at the time, and so it was stated that the murder might be the result of a burglary gone wrong. However, 23 years later, when the case was reinvestigated, the DNA samples that were taken from a bite mark on the victim's body pointed at Stephanie Lazarus. By that time, Stephanie had become a very successful detective herself, and the investigation officers used wise tactics to ask Stephanie about this case. As the pieces of the case came together, it was revealed that Stephanie was dating Sherry's husband, John Rutten. During the interrogation, Stephanie started showing signs of guilt as she became more defensive and anxious. After months of trial, it was finally confirmed that she had murdered Sherry Rasmussen.
Saying that I did this. We had a fight, and so I went and killed her.
Was charged with first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 27 years in prison in 2009. The next case is about a senior British police officer, Ali Dazay, who was accused of corruption of assaulting and falsely arresting a man named Ward al-Baghdadi, to whom Dazay was in debt for £600. The Metropolitan Police Commander Ali Dazay was sentenced to 4 years of imprisonment. The head of the police described him as a criminal in uniform. Dazay first claimed that Ward al-Baghdadi, an Iraqi businessman who had been working on Dazay's website, had assaulted him when he came to ask Dazay for his money while he was at a Persian restaurant located in Hammersmith, West London. Dazay roughly arrested and handcuffed al-Baghdadi and took him to the police station. He also showed several injuries to the police that he claimed to have sustained during the assault, but doctors later concluded that they were all self-inflicted. He was released on license in March 2012. In 2020, a police officer named Jalen Fleer was accused of 20 felony and misdemeanor charges related to explicit acts with underage girls. The investigations that started in April 2020, after the county Crime Stoppers received complaints about a man who was involved in immoral acts and activities with a local child, lead to the police officer Jalen Fleer. As he was brought in for interrogation, the detective did her best to make Jalen feel at ease and made him answer all the potential questions. Jalen started to get more tense and anxious. The detective told him that they received complaints about him along with some photos that were sent from a Snapchat account called J178211. This combination of numbers was directly related to Jaylen, as 17 was his high school jersey number, 82 his college jersey number, and 2011 being the year he graduated. But Jaylen refuses to identify the account and says he has never heard of it. As for his defense, he asks the detective to call his lawyer. However, he is handed a search warrant and the police checks his phone, car, and also gets DNA samples. After a few weeks, all the required amount of evidence is found against Jaylen, and he turns himself in. He is charged with 20 felonies and was pleaded guilty of being engaged in lewd acts with children under the age of 14 and engaging in explicit acts with a child under the age of 16. He is then sentenced to 12 years in prison a few months later. The next person, David Carrick, a former Metropolitan Police officer, has been given 36 life sentences, totaling more than 30 years in prison. Carrick was found guilty of a staggering 85 sexual offenses, including intolerable infractions like various counts of rape and assault. These exhibits of hostility unfurled over a startling scope of 17 years from 2003 to 2020, during which Carrick was a working person from the police force. His victims numbered 12 individuals, each left harmed by the abuse of trust and authority they drove forward. The case has shaken public confidence in those committed to serve and secure, sending shockwaves through the local area and policing. It has raised upsetting issues about the adequacy of oversight and obligation inside the police positions, as Carrick's bad behaviors went undetected for so long. The earnestness of Carrick's sentence features society's commitment to standing firm on those infractions of power answerable for their exercises, complementing that no one is absolved from the guidelines that every other person observes. This case fills in as an obvious portrayal of significance of straightforwardness, oversight, and constant undertakings to stay aware of the decency of policing. It also includes the requirement of providing survivors of such appalling violations with assistance and care as they search for restitution and equity. Although many victims did not complain against Carrick's wrongdoings, in 2021, one woman spoke up, leading to Carrick's arrest in 2023. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. After being arrested on suspicion of kidnapping Sarah Everard, former Metropolitan Police officer Wayne Couzens had a disturbing encounter with police that was captured on body camera.
Conducted so far has led us to come and speak to you about it, to see what
He is found in the video frantically legitimizing his awful demonstration. In a vain endeavor to legitimize his terrible demonstration, Couzens guaranteed that he was constrained by the posse. A startling glimpse into the mind of the man who later confesses to kidnapping, raping, and murdering the 33-year-old marketing director is provided by the footage. His evil is uncovered when he attempts to keep away from liability regarding his activities. When Wayne Couzens received a life sentence, capital prevailed, ensuring that he would not be eligible for parole for the rest of his life. This brutal discipline is an unmistakable update that such horrifying demonstrations don't be tolerated and mirrors the reality of his wrongdoings. The body cam footage is a chilling reminder of how horrifying Sarah Everard's life was disrupted and how important responsibility continues to be despite such unspeakable protests. Next up, we have the former police chief, Grant Hardin, who confessed to a disturbing and well-established case of assault tracing all the way back to 1997. During a murder investigation, the doors opened to a rape incident that was committed in 1997, in which Hardin was found involved. A teacher was made a victim to a terrifying assault, which had stayed hidden for a really long time. First taken in as a suspect for a murder investigation, Hardin was subjected to interrogation. He tried everything he could to escape custody, but unfortunately nothing worked for him. The interrogation video shows Hardin trying to pick the lock and getting more anxious with time. As the interrogation began, he did not know what he was really brought in for, and he refused to answer any of the questions the detective asked. The detectives leave the room, and later, the interrogation continues, which still brings no luck as Grant refuses to answer any questions.
Yes, I would have liked to, but...
The police take some time to talk to witnesses and gather more information about the case. As the investigation continued, Grant asked for a lawyer, to which the interrogation came to an end, but it did not work in Grant's favor. As the court trial began, Grant and his lawyer understood that there was no way out of this, and later on October 16, 2017, he pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. As he was being prosecuted, a terrifying revelation came forward. After the DNA tests were made, his DNA was already found in the system for a case that was recorded in 1997, in which an elementary school teacher was victimized in the teacher's lounge bathroom, and the suspect fled after committing this crime, leaving no evidence behind besides the fluids left on the victim's clothes. Grant Hardin was then sentenced to 35 years in prison, 21 years sentence for the murder of James Appleton, and 14 years for the assault. Last but not least, we have a police officer named Stephen Cloney. Between the years of 2015 and 2019, strange activities were noticed by the Merseyside Police Department, and that was the suspicious disappearance of evidence from raided properties. As the investigations were made on this matter, it was revealed that Stephen Cloney, who himself was working as a police officer, took confidential information from the police databases and sold it to criminals. Cloney had sold information on raids, locations, details to robbers, and other confidential information. He used this way to make money and clear himself of a massive debt he was under. In 2020, Cloney was found guilty of corruption and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. It was also decided that after he is released, he would not be allowed to work as a police officer ever again. And this concludes our video for today. Unfortunately, some disturbing incidents are still happening out there. But what do you think about this? What can we as individuals do to better educate the people with power and to avoid situations like these? Let's start a conversation down in the comments, and as for everything else, drop us a like, share it with your friends to spread awareness, and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this, as it really helps us grow. As always, thanks for watching and stay safe.